Talks right here. We gonna talk about it right here. I'm gonna talk about everything you like. I'm gonna make it real quick, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'm gonna talk about it. Yeah, cause it's Tynee Talks. And I'm gonna talk about it.
Today's show is brought to you by Pure Cuts, located in Mansfield, Texas. That is 801 North Main Street in Mansfield, Texas. Pure Cuts is where you get the master barber experience. They specialize in men's cuts, kids cuts, women cuts, edge ups, braidings, lockery twists, the whole nine. You get the whole shebang when you go to Pure Cuts. So make sure you mention Tynee Talks and get a little percentage off your haircut, all right? Tell them Tynee sent you. And welcome to the Tynee Talks podcast, the podcast that educates and entertains, the podcast where you come to laugh and learn. I am your host, Tynee, and I have a wonderful subject topic today, something that I enjoy. It has help me physically, mentally, emotionally, and that is yoga. And I have with me the OmYogaDiva, Nicole Paseur. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, Nicole Paseur. Yes, that's great.
Nicole Paseur. I love it. Is it French?
Yes.
It sounds sexy. It sounds, you know what I mean? And so I have her with me today, and she's going to tell us about the wonderful world of yoga. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Nicole. I got my notes here. So during the pandemic, everybody remembers that? It was an insane time. Oh, yeah. We didn't know if we were going to be coming or going or what was ahead of us. And for many of us, it caused us a lot of stress. So during the pandemic, people were losing their jobs and doing all the things. So Nicole pivoted from what she was doing to teach virtual private yoga. After logging over 3,000 Zoom hours while teaching yoga, her capacity to strengthen students on the Zoom platform has had a ripple effect in everyone she serves. She opened a virtual yoga studio and offered her yoga trainings in corporate classes, group chair yoga, and meditation curricula from all over the world. And that's exactly how I met Nicole. She came and did a group chair yoga with my sorority, the Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and I fell in love. Let me see. Let me give her all her kudos. She did yoga. She did yoga not only for her family, she did it for her sanity. She began doing yoga for humanity. She held tree pose while she drafted memos to her paralegal. Instead of beginning her day with Dunkin' Donuts iced coffee, which I love, she began taking 5 a.m. breathing classes with the yoga guru Mary Dunn at the, I think I'm pronouncing this right, Iyengar?
Yes,
Iyengar Institute of Yoga in New York City. Yoga crept upon her like a sweet, tranquil voice that soothes a fussy child. She attended yoga during lunch breaks, and then at 6 p.m. when coworkers invited her to rent stress from her mind with cosmopolitans at the Algonquin, she declined. Instead, the attorney killed stress and unfurled her mat in Bikram studios, Hatha studios, Kanladi studios, Ashtanga studios, restorative classes, sacred classes, and vinyasa all over New York. And vinyasa also is my favorite form of yoga.
Oh, why do you like vinyasa so much?
I think that it pushes you.
Yes.
I think that it pushes you. Finally, the yogic transformation emboldened her to take yoga out of the Yoga People studio and into the Brooklyn housing court, where she began using pranayama, which is yogic breathing, to calm difficult opposing counsel. Oh, I love that. Just as the snake charmer calms the cobra, she ensorced the snake attorneys to stop their ugly hissing and slow down their breathing. They became mindful and often ceased their bullying and to comply with the housing maintenance code, and gave her clients, the citizens of New York, better living conditions by fixing their buildings. Now that's wonderful because we know New York is tough. And when we think about a tough New York lawyer, they're playing no games. So, so yoga seems to be magical in that sense.
Yes.
And so I'll let Nicole tell more about her, but without further ado, I just want to welcome you to the Tynee Talks.
Thank you, Tynee. I'm so glad to be here. And I'm glad you love vinyasa. Maybe we should just start in right there with what type of yoga you like, and then we can educate your audience on that yoga. It's a type of yoga that moves quickly from pose to pose. Mm-hmm. You could think of it as instead of just staying in one place, you move all different shapes of the body in a pattern. The typical pattern is called salutation, and then you move out from there and do the poses. And it's almost like, I think of it, if you've ever seen the beauty of a double Dutch jumper.
Yeah, and I'm a double Dutch girl.
Oh, you are?
Yes.
Something just called to me to use that as a bridge. Mm-hmm. But so with double Dutch, you're counting and you're breathing.
Yes. Double Dutch is very rhythmic. When I was, we did it every day of my childhood. We would even have double Dutch tournaments, and I always counted on the rhythm. It wasn't like a 1, 2, 3, but I could feel the rope, the beat of the rope, and then I could jump in, jump right into it.
And that's a similar thing that happens in vinyasa, because on the pose, it would be inhale up, exhale fold, inhale, exhale, step back, downward facing dog, moving into these shapes. And in the same way with double Dutch, you've got to even breathe with the person if you're doing a duet. Correct. So imagine a whole room of people doing double Dutch with these shapes on the breath and in the rhythm of the teacher's alignment instructions. Mm-hmm. And that's one style that I have taught and that I enjoy. And then I also love styles that hold the poses longer. Mm-hmm. And I also adore the poses that you don't do anything but rest on a pillow and go to sleep. And that's restorative.
Yes. I love that too. Where that one, it takes you out of the stresses of the world. And I want to tell my audience a little bit, and I want you to go more in depth from your bio of how you got into it. But I started yoga when I was in my late 20s. I did it for fun with my friend, Steven, AV Squad Steven, to be exact. So shout out to Steven if you see this. And we used to go for fun. But then when I moved to Dallas, I'm from Michigan, and when I moved to Dallas and I got heavier, I started getting really intense pains in my lower back. I have bursitis. I have a little bit of arthritis in my lower back. And so they assigned me to physical therapy. Well, I didn't feel like, number one, physical therapy gets expensive when they want you to do it as often as they want you to do it, even with health insurance. And I found that when I did yoga, I felt better than I did when I did physical therapy. And so I really enjoyed it. And I joined the Diana School of Yoga. Shout out to Diana in Grand Prairie. And that's how I got into yoga. And then I started doing yoga in the hood. Are you familiar with yoga in the hood?
Ebony, she's
Ebony,
amazing.
yes, Ebony is amazing.
Shout out to Ebony. She's doing a marvelous things for the community, and just to create yoga that's accessible for everyone.
Accessibility is awesome. And she also made it feel like, she's, plus size woman, and she can show you like you can be flexible, bendable, stretch your body, stretch your mind, and not be, petite or, small or whatever. So she was really encouraging in that arena for me. And then I met you at the sorority event, and we had our private session, and you really stretched me, girl. And your passion for it drew me to you. You're so passionate about it, and you mean it from the depths of your heart. And I think that's what's contagious, or your spirit is contagious, and you're very calming, your voice is calming, and that's what I think about when I think about yoga. I think about calmness. So for
and
you,
that calmness, Tynee, that you address is something that we take off of the yoga mat and out into the world. So when I talked about, I was doing a lot of yoga while I was litigating as an attorney for the city of New York, I started to bring that breath with me to calm myself down. If I was standing in front of the judge and I was scared, I would slow down my breath and plant my feet and literally just do a mountain pose, which is a pose meaning stand up straight, plant your feet, and roll your shoulders back and lift from the top of the head. So what's fascinating is I can see students do that pose perfectly, have good posture, and then they leave me and I see them. And I said, guys, you just had perfect posture. I need you to take that from that scenario and interweave it when you're texting. You need to stand up straight. When you're talking to someone, when you're driving, when you're standing in line to get your iced coffee at Dunkin' Donuts, you need to stand up and roll the shoulders back, right? And still with the breath. And that is the way to move towards the mind becoming your ally, instead of, everything around us draws us out, pulls us off center. You don't have this, you don't have that, you've got to watch this, you got to get this new upload for your computer, your phone, your life, your diet, your whatever. And what starts to happen is you feel, destabilized.
Yes.
Versus if you sit still just for, even it could be even just for a breath, just for a breath. If you're texting and you're waiting for those 3 little dots to turn into a sentence, that's not a time for you to throw laser beams at the screen like, hurry up and answer. It's the time to roll the shoulders back. Don't crane your neck, but lift up and just breathe and wait.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's a very different way to move in the world. Hypertension, stress around digestion, sour stomach or heartburn, all of those are stress base, can be an exacerbating factor. So stress can cause inflammation, and it can cause all the systems to become sticky and not as effective.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. So when you got the script for physical therapy, did you notice how the yoga had a lot of commonalities with what?
Yes, absolutely. A lot of the stretches that I was given when I got to yoga, it would be that times 2, or, in the same vein of what they were, telling me to do, especially for the lower back stretches and the hip stretches. And I noticed, I'm like, wow, they're charging people hundreds of dollars for physical therapy, and I know people have to have their jobs or their careers, but I'm like, yoga it was where it was at for me. At least it was for me. I can't speak for anybody else, but it really truly was for me. So your bio says since 2020. So is it safe to say that's when you started the practice of yoga, or was it years before that?
Oh, I started yoga probably years before, even before law school. So let's say I started law school, I don't know, let me date myself, before 1992.
Oh, wow. Really?
So even before then, even when I was very small, my mom and I would do yoga, and it was on public television. And it was a very different thing, and it was off-brand, kooky, it felt, you know, very, very eccentric. And now yoga is everywhere. So over these, I'm going to say, 30, 35 years, slowly, yoga has become, when I saw yoga being used to sell a truck, and not a Jeep, but like a truck, I was like, oh. And that was not even, I could see you could sell yoga for yogurt or yoga for kombucha, but this was a truck. And I was like, okay, then.
You know, things become really trendy.
Yes.
You know what I mean? It becomes the latest fad. And, you know, people will pick it up and put it on like a costume and then, you know, discard it. But it is really something that is really valuable that can help you in your life. When I was looking up the research of it, it said the 5 top things that yoga can do for you. It says it provides you with proper exercises, asanas, proper breathing, pranayama, proper relaxation, and proper diet and nutrition, as you said, with the gut health, and then meditation and positive thinking. And so I was raised Christian, and I remember when I was dabbling into yoga in my early 20s, and, you know, I was just doing it more so. I guess the first time I actually tried it, to your point, was in grad school. They offered a free class in grad school, and then I went. And then when I, you know, moved back home, like I said, me and my friend used to go. But sometimes I would feel conflicted because, you know, it would say, you know, it was not godly in the sense of Christianity. It wasn't Jesus based. It wasn't Christianity based. And it was kind of considered negative. And then in my research, they're like, oh, Jesus was a yogi.
Right? I'm saying yes. Yes.
So how do you, when you're trying to introduce it to someone who, you know, was maybe raised Christian, and you're like, you know, yoga can help you. And they're like, I'm not doing that. You know, that ain't no God. Right. You know, people will say that.
Yes.
You know, how do you enter it into their lives to let them know it's okay?
I just had this conversation with a woman who was doing a teacher training, and the studio where she was asked to teach had that demographic of, you know, this is the South, you know, this is the Bible Belt plus a little bit more. And there are parts, if you do know your Bible, there are parts that say, stay awake and keep watch. Does that sound familiar? I mean, if you do a yoga class, sit up straight and stay with your shoulders back, and stay present. So that's happening when they're watching. The disciples are watching, and Jesus says, stay awake. And he comes back and they're asleep. And he says, didn't I tell you to stay alert.
Watch.
And the historical person of Jesus is, in his life, there's a chunk of years where we don't really know what he was doing.
It's not recorded.
Right. From 12 to like 18, somewhere around there. And in that time, anybody who was studying, anybody who was like, let's say you want to study music. You're going to go probably to the really great schools that have music, or you're going to go to New Orleans, or you're going to immerse yourself in jazz, or find yourself in Nashville if you're bent for country, or go to Juilliard. So there were these thought leaders that all kind of knew and were tracking each other. So from 12 to 18, he's missing, and then he comes back and he's saying things that sound a lot like, be calm, be gentle, stay awake. And then also the paths to the truth are many, but the center of the goal is always usually the same. whether any of the big Judaism, Christianity, Muslim, even in the aspects of Hinduism, you're finding what looks to be, oh, but there's so many different gods. That's polytheism. It's an aspect of one deity. Or with Christianity, we have Father, Son, Holy Ghost.
Correct.
Jesus, you know? So that's a triad. So when people look at other religions, it's important to think about the underlying goal, which is to create a calm and a better person from a power that they, whatever they have subscribed to.
For sure.
You know? And for Christians, it's important to find that base in Jesus and whatever, you know, whatever denomination, Methodist, Baptist, or Episcopalian, those are different types, but it's still under the umbrella. And what happens with yoga is there is a xenophobia. It's something that's strange. It's something that's new, and that can create a recoil. You know, oh, that's strange. You know, I'm afraid. Are you trying to get me to join a cult?
Yeah.
You know,
they'll say things like that. And I noticed that when I do go and practice and, you know, we're meditating, they're saying, you know, think on, you know, positive things or things like that. I'll use that time to pray.
Yes.
To my God, you know, to my higher power.
Yes.
To Jesus. Where, you know, somebody else next to me may be praying to whomever. And for me, that's their choice, as I have my choice, as God has given us free will, you know? And so it's so much peace. When you use the examples of these hard-hitting shark lawyers of New York, and that is very important because we all watch Law and Order. We all watch these cop lawyer shows where it can be cutthroat. And I think if we brought that energy of yoga to the youth, a lot of them are very angry with the conditions, with the world. We brought the energy that you bring to a room. I think that you can change the youth in that way if they had this outlet to de-stress.
Yes. There's so much to unpack right there. Was it the weekend before last? I was with the Links Incorporated, and they have a STEAM scholar, young women, girls, women, for science, technology, engineering, art, and math. And the Links are taking about 50 scholars and exposing them to NASA, taking them to, you know, a science lab, to a hospital, going to see an art. And they brought me in 2 weeks ago for breathing and meditation and gentle stretching. And what we did was just breathe and just visualize, just think of a color. So, you know, you think of the color purple. One of the sentences, she was contemplating purple. And when you start to contemplate, even just think of your favorite color. If you just close your eyes and breathe, and just think of your favorite color, that creates an association with your brain around calm, centered, and peaceful. And the color is actually cross-wiring what you see and what you feel. Right? So if you listen to a music type of song that is like the blues, it can bring you, literally it's called the blues because it's the color, right? It's a sound, but it's also a color. And yoga is a movement, but it's also a feeling. And so when you go into court, and I do work with attorneys, and the trouble of coming into a courtroom with your shoulders slouched and you looking down and you're not breathing, number one, you don't project. You can't connect with the jury. You can't even build confidence. You can't be an appropriate advocate if you don't stand up straight, pull your shoulders back, and then breathe, not from the chest, but more into the depth of the base of the lungs and more towards the solar plexus. So if you just try that while you're sitting here, and you sit tall and you plant your feet and you just place your hands lightly on your stomach and you just allow yourself to breathe. That's a different way to sit down and take a test if you're about to take a test. That's a different way to go into an interview. That's a different way to have a painful conversation with someone and still say your truth with authenticity. So these are tools. We have apps for everything. Oh, you want to track your budget. You want to track this. This is an app that doesn't rely on your phone. It relies on you slowing down and just breathing. And guess what? You can walk and breathe, and that counts as walking mindfulness. If a lot of people are crocheting.
Yeah.
That pulls them in and brings them calm. If you play music, if you're talking, the flow state that you see great athletes, Michael Jordan, think of the way he was just so focused. You see that in double dutch. They're so focused because if you're not focused, you're going to get hit with the rope.
And it will hurt.
Yeah. And then you'll mess up. So what I love about what you're bringing into this space is that yoga doesn't have to have the name yoga. You can do stretching. Yeah. I teach a wonderful chair yoga. Everyone can be invited. I'll send out the link. And the chair, we sit in the chair and it doesn't look like your normal yoga. But God bless her, my oldest student just died last summer, 93. Doing chair yoga. Yeah. You think of the Delaney sisters, they were doing yoga. Yeah. And, people don't, I'll date myself, but one of the really great football players, is it Swan? His last name was Swan. Okay, I'm going to forget it. I'll type it back out. But he was doing ballet. This was like 50, 40 years ago. But ballet is even a way to tone and hold the spine. And you're going to find that the Mavericks have yoga. They have yoga. There's a lot of cross-germinating between these sports that need core, balance, stretch, stamina, and focus.
And most of all, focus. I believe that if a lot of students who have been diagnosed with like ADD or ADHD, if they could have time in their day, really, to go into a room dimly lit, to take those cleansing breaths and to clear out their minds, to go back to what we always say in yoga, to be centered. Yes. When you notice when you're in the practice, it says like, okay, let's go back to center. Yes. And everyone knows what that is. You know what I mean? It's just, Nicole, it's everything. And the people must know. So can you tell me a little bit about your trainings and your certifications and all the types of yoga that you're well versed in?
Yes. I just really quickly looked because I didn't want to wake up at 3 a.m. and be like, oh, that person was Lynn. It's Lynn Swan. So people can Google him. And he's a football player from USC. He was with the Pittsburgh Steelers. back in the day. But he was doing ballet. And he was an outlier and an early adapter for using these shapes, ballet, to stretch and to make him much more graceful. But for my training, I started off, because I was very embarrassed to do yoga in public because my joints sound like pop, 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 popcorn.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was like, I can't do this in front of other people, I will disturb them. So for the first, 5 years, I would just do yoga on a video by myself.
Mm-hmm.
When I was in law school, I had only one video cassette, shove that in the big VHS, shove that in there and would watch it. And it was just yoga for beginners.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started studying, and I was in New York at this time, and I wanted to study, but I didn't want to pay for a teacher training.
Mm-hmm.
So I just looked at their syllabus and I said, I can do this by myself. I'll just find these exact teachers and get them as my private person to teach me. Mm-hmm. So if there's someone who was teaching the language of yoga, which is called Sanskrit, I went to this woman named Manorma. If there's the anatomy, there's a woman named Amy Matthews. She was doing dissections back in the day, mm-hmm. which is something I really can't wait to do, because it's a lot of anatomy. If you are that type of a yoga teacher, which I am, I'm very interested in the body and how it moves. Mm-hmm. Then I would study sequencing with another teacher. And then there's an overlying organization called the Yoga Alliance. And it vets and it looks at, you have to have 200 hours of this, and this. So long story longer, I cobbled together all those hours, and then they changed the rules.
Of course.
They were like, oh, you could grandfather in. Mm-hmm. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to save money, because then I can spend more just to take more classes. Mm-hmm. So I had that 200 hours. Then they said, oh, we're not going to accept them. So that I went back, and then I did a whole other. So by the time I did my first teacher training that was under an umbrella of a school called Yoga Works in New York, mm-hmm. I had already had over 200 hours. So I was a very different type of student, because I already had practiced for years and years and years with my mom and by myself. Mm-hmm. So I looked very different when I came into that room from the other students who were newer. Then I did a 300, then I kept going. So like a PhD, if you think of grad school, you did your master's and your PhD?
Just my master's.
Okay, well, don't say just, say I did my master's. Yeah, so these are advanced degrees in yoga. Once you have your 500, and then you go on and you practice so many years. And it's really a joy to see over time more people of color, because I'm ashamed to say, when I was taking yoga, it was really like, I'm going to say 15 years before I ever had a Southeast Asian, like an Indian person teaching mm-hmm. me. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Although yoga's for everybody, it can be for anybody. And yet now there's a movement for the cultural aspects, mm-hmm. for it not to be so far off. And then also now there's many more, when I first came and was doing yoga in Dallas, I'm the only person of color in the room. Mm-hmm. That's changed completely.
Yeah. I've seen really way more Black instructors, and I think that, as we mentioned earlier, the religious aspect, I think as we moved into more information as time has gone on, that people realize I could be saved and practice this thing that gets us to being centered, to getting to peaceful, so that we can carry out the principles that we're taught of Christ, to be kind, to speak good words, because there's nothing negative about yoga. Everything about it is a positive practice. And I think, like I said, as we move more into information and people, of color got more wind of it, to say, oh, I can do this.
Yes.
It's not bad. It's not evil. And I think that's why we're seeing more of people of color in it.
That, and then also I believe that, you know, there's history around the movements. When you look back, especially in Brazil,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you look back in the African diaspora, the movement-based cultural sciences that we had were often made tamped down, made illegal. So I'm thinking here of like capoeira, which is the movement that comes with like the drum or the jinga, you know. A lot of it looks like yoga. You're going back and forth, you're getting low. A lot of the movements, and I'll send you a picture when I was in Brazil, a lot of the things, I'm like, that's a yoga move.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at it, so a strong, agile person is a lot harder to physically restrain.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if
For
you
sure.
see someone and you can do these things and you can flip and stretch and bend, it looks also quite like martial arts in some ways. And the vinyasa wasn't the real, it didn't come from the origin point. That's a new type of yoga.
Okay.
It wasn't, the most original yoga was maybe just one or two poses and the breath.
Mm.
And then as it developed, it started to look a lot more like this pattern of movement.
Yes.
And that was with someone called Patabi Joyce in a type of yoga called Ashtanga, which means eight limbs. Then the type that I more gravitated towards was Iyengar, which is a little bit slower. They use props. You hold the poses longer. And the question for everybody to have an access to this, you know, a lot of people feel some kind of way about sweating, getting sweaty, and you have to, I've got to do my hair, or whatever it is. And I understand that, you know, you don't want to have to think, I spent time exercising and now I have to, but, and the importance, especially for African-American women in this country, we have got to move.
We have to.
We're skewing in a pattern where it's simply, we need to be healthier around just movement.
Yes, indeed.
And loving the body, however shape it comes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's nothing about a rounder body that bespeaks an unhealthy body, as long as that body has been moving.
Yep, you got it.
We're not
moving.
all going to look the same way, and yet we can all be. Everyone can have a healthy set point for the body that God has given them.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. For sure. So you work with all types of levels of yoga practitioners. You even mentioned your oldest 93-year-old patient. How do you structure your experience with a person that's just starting and an advanced person? Or if you have a mixed setting, like how do you bring them all together?
Well, years and years and years and years ago, there was something called the Little Red Schoolhouse. And that little house in the country, schoolhouse, had 12th graders mixed in with kindergartners because there was only one school.
And one teacher.
And one teacher.
Yeah.
And so what started to happen was you couple together levels. So when I say, okay, level 1, you're going to hold it here. Level 2, 3, step back, hop back, jump back. Level 4, 5, go ahead and go towards a handstand or whatever it is. whatever they can do at their level, it's accessible. And it's better, I feel, to have a class with lots of different levels, because it gives the new people a chance to see the progression, and it gives the more advanced people a chance to see, oh, I used to be, they can see the trajectory of their progression. And I just start off, you know, one of the most challenging, rewarding classes that I did was an 80-year-old woman. She could not get up off of the floor by herself, and she was going to be put in a nursing home.
Yeah.
And her daughter said, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm like, give me an hour with her. And so literally we were on our backs, breathing, and just rolling, and then roll, twist, put your arm down, lean back, roll, twist, take your knee over to the side. Okay, lean over, put your elbows down, swing your foot forward. Okay, breathe, come onto hands and knees. That's cat and cow. And then lean back, lift your foot, put it forward. And then she's like in what looks to be like a King Arthur, like being knighted. And then push down, and then she could stand up. So it was just that simple, like, how can you move where you are? Maybe you're not going to touch your toes, and you don't need to touch your toes. Maybe you just put your hands on top of your thighs and round and arch your back. So it's just, the sad part about the bill of goods around yoga is you have to be flexible. No, some people are very strong, and the range of their muscle is not going to be towards flex. They're going to present very strong. So like if a sport specific Achilles tendon, if you're a high jumper, you don't want a stretchy calf or Achilles.
Why not?
You gotta jump.
Okay.
And that's a very different muscle request than someone who, you know, is going to glide on the ice, or someone who is going to row, if you're doing rowing, or soccer, you know, low to the ground and twisting. So each body type can have its sweet spot. And yoga will find you where you are. You don't have to think of, oh, I've got to go do this. No.
Yeah. And you're, like you said, because I've been in the class of multi-levels. And it is, I remember the first time I did a handstand, like 2 years later. It was like, I could do that. Like, you get so impressed with yourself, and it's like an internal victory. It's like you said, it's this app. When you use the example of your body being the app, right? We get so much gratification from external things, like on the phone or getting likes or hearted on social media. But the gratification that you get from going from, I could barely move my hand, or like the mobility now that I have in my lower back and able to move more, I'm able to deadlift better. Those endorphins being released out of your body is better than any social media like that you can get, you know, especially through this practice and seeing from where you started to where you could go. So you teach a lot of online classes.
Yes.
You are the OmYogaDiva. How do you foster a sense of community with your yogis virtually?
That is such a good question. I'm glad you asked. The people who show up and come to my classes, because it's a smaller group, and because I use the platform very, very, very differently. I am not a passive teacher. Even back in the day when we were in studio, there were some teachers who would sit at the front. Okay, do this, 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 and this. Okay, do this, do this, do this. Okay, now do this, do this. And I was like, in the back row, yelling at the person in front, over here, yelling at this person. Come on, you can do it. I'm crawling on the ground, looking at feet. The Zoom gives me that too. I look in and I see I'm teaching the whole class, but I notice Joan is not straightening her right leg enough. Joan, blah, 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 blah. Sally, blah, blah, blah. Monique, da, 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 da. So I'm like a switchboard. I don't even think a certain demographic is even going to know what a switchboard is. But it used to be, back in the day, when you made telephone calls, there was an operator who would connect the line.
Yes.
So what I'm doing, a better example would be directing an orchestra. So if my horns are sluggish, they're going to get a different, I'm going to feed my energy towards them. And then, my string section. So Zoom, I can't speak of how other people use Zoom, but I use Zoom to follow you and be on you like a duck on a June bug.
And I can attest, when I had my private lesson with Nicole, she could see some of my deficiencies. Like
they weren't deficiencies. They were just little areas where I saw an opportunity to.
Yes. Well, maybe I shouldn't use the term deficiency, but there was a pose where you had me, sit with my feet together and the knees apart. And you were like, you see how your leg is sitting up higher than the other on this side? You're like, oh, we gotta stretch that. We gotta get it to be lower. And I'm like, so now when I do it by myself, I'm very cognizant of it, or I'll put extra weight on one side to even them out, to stretch out my hip flexors. So when she says she's fostering community, that she's doing an orchestra of what's going on, she's not lying, guys. She's telling the truth. And
now that's good and bad, because then some people hide. Like, I had this one person, we're teaching, and AT&T shut down yesterday.
Yeah, so
right?
I heard.
And so things can go wrong. That's the one negative. Technology is great until it doesn't work. So sometimes the feed or the Wi-Fi will be slow, and you can get someone and they'll just be like, and I'm watching this woman, and we're getting into a very difficult sequence, and she's just like, but then I look and I see her eyes blinking, and I'm like, Shanae, your screen is not frozen.
Right.
Like, she was trying to play, like, if I just act like, no, I see you breathing. Now get in the pose and stop playing. Like, it's just that level of intimacy. Now, I can speak that way because I am, not all Zoom classes work that way. There are some where the teacher's just yelling out the commands and not engaging. I had the pleasure of, the AME church going, or going into movie theaters in Harlem. There's a call and response.
Yes, that's right.
And
God is good.
Yes.
All the time.
Can I get a witness? Well, okay.
Yeah.
So that happens in some yoga classes. I'll speak for mine. People yell back at me. And I'm not, okay, guys, how's this? No, or what? Yes, or oh, we don't like you right now. So it's a very much like that back and forth. And not every teacher's like that. And I do feel that when the teacher teaches, the teacher's also learning, because I didn't know what your hip was going to say, because you have a specific pattern. I knew that you had some delicacies around the hip flexor, that's SI joint. And then I wanted to go very carefully around until I figured out What was the history? What was the pattern? What was your hip going to say to me when I put it in this position? It might be different tomorrow, next year, or the next time, and it's going to be different on a different body.
Absolutely.
So that fostering of community comes with the intimacy of being with a teacher who is invested in you and your body and your practice, how you're showing up. The first thing I do is I say, how is everybody today? What can we work? I have this, I have this, I have this. 10 different people have 10 different things. And guess what? Everybody's neck is hurting. Yes. Everybody has something in the shoulder. Like if you think you're unique because your hip is a little creaky, get in line.
Right.
You're not, we think we're special, and we are, like little snowflakes. Everyone's different, and yet we're all the same. The human body, the knees, the hips, the shoulders, these are all anatomically consistent places where yoga or whatever you're doing can create a life for you so that you're not in pain and you can do what you are called to do. In yoga, we call it your dharma. You can live your purpose. And that is my goal, to get you healthy enough, because I can't save the world by myself, but I've got you. You're disseminating this. You're helping people. So if I make your hip feel a little better, you're going to show up when you do your next podcast or whatever it is you're doing. Or if you're a mom, you're going to be able to bend down a little, or you're a grandma, or you're a firefighter, or, whatever you're doing in your day to day, there's a way that your body needs love, strength, tenderness around some of the way that the body is keeping score and has that constant stress of just every.
Okay. I think it had cut out a little bit. It was the internet. Okay. It was like a delay. Okay. So as we come to a close of this wonderful talk on yoga, do you have any recommendations for integrating yoga into a person's daily routine?
I do. I would say just start, if you're sitting at your desk, clasp your hands together, roll your wrists, keep your hands intertwined, stretch, and just take the arms overhead as long as you don't have any, and they don't have to go straight. You could just roll your shoulders. You could be seated and just come into a gentle twist. You could
this feels good. I'm doing everything you said.
Yeah, and you know what? That's the beginning of a yoga pose that is called seated chair with a twist pose. Utkatasana, awkward chair, and then those twists. If you can get on the floor, lie down on the floor, get your bathrobe belt, tie it around your foot, just lift your leg up and just stretch your leg from side to side. It doesn't have to go far, A lot of people say, but if I get on the floor, I can't get back up. Okay, don't get on the floor, get in your bed. Make your bed up, get the pillows up and lie down and just twist on your bed.
And that'll help.
That will help.
A great deal. And so one thing I want to say, because I have some friends, we're all in our late 30s, our bodies are becoming creaky. It's a lot of creakiness going on. If you could do a 30-second commercial on why someone should do yoga, can you just pitch that to us?
Yes. The 30 seconds, I would say, being with the breath and moving your body will bring you joy wherever you are. And that is yoga.
I love it. Nicole, your presence with me today has truly calmed my spirit. From the time you came on camera, I'm like, So your name is fitting, OmYogaDiva. When I think of Om, I think of like, Let me be centered.
Yes,
So you have a centeredness and a gentle calm about you that I know that you're in the right field for you. I'm pretty sure you're a badass in law, and I don't know if you still practice, but you're definitely badass in yoga.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say one last thing. When you talked about being prayerful in a yoga class and thinking of Jesus, thinking of what your centered place for spiritual relief, meditation is that Jesus talking to you versus prayer is you talking to, prayer is like you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're quiet, you know, the saying, be still and know God, you coming into that stillness, you're not asking everything, you just be still, and things will come, you'll feel a more balanced. And that's another way that I work, which is hypnocoaching. Now that is another very kind of off-putting idea in which we didn't even get into. Yet if you have an imagination and you think your favorite grandma, her smell, her cooking, her whatever, it stimulates a part of the brain. Yeah. If you're an athlete and you think of your routine that you're gonna run down the court, swim, whatever, the other part of my practice is I work in hypnocoaching, and I have, if anybody wanted to try, it's very much relaxing. And it's not, oh, when you hear a car make a clucking sound like a chicken. No, it's not that type of hypnosis. For your listeners, I'm going to put it in the notes. If you want 50% off to try a session with me, and then also for a complimentary session in my chair yoga class, the code Tynee, Tynee, and I'll send that, you know, the link. You can come in and just try that chair yoga class. If you want to let me know you're coming, I'll be ready for you. If you have any questions, just start where you are. Just how about just going for a walk? You know, just or if you can't get outside, if you're homebound, whatever, be near a window, open the window and just breathe. Put your hands on the table and just rock back and forth. That can be like a push-up. So whatever you can do, I just encourage all of the beautiful listeners out there, do what you can and just do something small.
Do what you can and do something small. Just keep moving. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the Tynee Talks podcast and enlightening my listeners on the practice of yoga, how you got into yoga, and anybody who will listen or watches will know that you know your stuff and that they need to be in your presence and in your class. So I'll make sure that I have in the show notes the 50% off. They can use code Tynee, which I have going across the screen, and then we'll also put the link. Where can my listeners follow you on social media?
I'm at OM Yoga YOGA Diva. OmYogaDiva. 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 That's where I'm living on the IG handle.
All right, and we got it going across the screen at OmYogaDiva. Make sure you follow her for great tips, great poses, great practices, and where you can go to her website and you can book with her at OmYogaDiva.com. That is OmYogaDiva.com. Thank you. And in true Tynee Talks fashion, we do shout outs here. So who would you like to give a shout out to today?
I would like to, she might be a butterfly. She might be a ray of sun. She might be that beautiful energy that you feel the first day of spring. But I want to give a shout out to Lois. She passed over to the other side. And yet when I think of a true yoga person, this woman at 93 was she would show up and she she was so sharp. And that's what I wish for everyone, just to live as long as you want and never want as long as you live. And for every single day to just be just so enriched, wonderful. And I would give a shout out to her. I know she's doing yoga somewhere with the angels. And I'm very grateful to have met her. And that's the best part, just I give a shout out to Lois because she really changed my practice and my life.
Shout out to Lois. Well, thanks once again to all my listeners out there. Just know that Tynee Talks is the podcast that educates and entertains, where you come to laugh and learn. And I hope that you learned a lot about yoga today, that if you haven't tried it, that you just give it a try. Take those deep breaths, stretch your mind, stretch your body, and stretch your heart. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.